We'll convene the November the 28th, 2017 Zoning Board of Appeals meeting. We have the agenda, and what I wanted to do with the agenda is make a motion to move item number 5 and 6, reverse them, have the appeal before election of officers. So I make that change. We have a motion to approve.
So moved.
Support.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so we've got approval of the minutes of May the 23rd, 2017. It's been half a year. More than half a year. Good. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
All in favor? Aye. Okay, so we've got the minutes approved. Now we have the appeal number 17002, and this is for, oh, that's not the right, 17003, Mr. Joseph H. Now I don't know if I'm pronouncing this right. Ohab? Ohab? Okay, C is silent. Ohab of 25044 East River has requested a public hearing before the Zoning Board of Appeals to not improve the road for the entire length of the lot frontages on lots 747 through 759. Grosse Hill Manor subdivision as recorded in Wayne County records does not apply with Chapter 205 Roads and Driveways, Section 205-5B. What we're going to do, can I tell you, Joe?
Yeah, that's fine, yeah.
Okay. Okay. Well, yeah, what we're going to do is we're going to have Brian give us an overview of the appeal, and then after he gives us the overview, then we'll give you the opportunity to come up and give us your reasons why we should consider the appeal. Okay, so Brian's going to come up.
All right, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Just the one case before us this evening, and admittedly, and I'm sure you all got this after reviewing the agenda packet, a bit of an unconventional case, not something we're used to seeing requests to modify from the Roads and Driveways Ordinance. Everybody hear me okay? So, again, a bit of an unusual request in that the bulk of our cases typically revolve around setback variances, things that are generally a little bit easier to kind of wrap your mind around, as opposed to the extension of what we refer to as paper roadways commonly in the township. So I've got a bit of an overview I want to go through, and I did incorporate a few extra maps into the slideshow to kind of give you a feel for what's there now and what is essentially how this entire subdivision and this entire area is platted, so how essentially the road network was intended to be developed at some point in time. So you can kind of see how all of the puzzle pieces fit together a little more clearly and kind of hopefully make sense out of all of this. So generally speaking, this is our subject area right in here. We're essentially where Chicory dead ends now. So if any of you did a site visit, you drive off a ferry down Chicory, and then the roadway just ends. There's one home, the last home on the west side, and then the roadway ends, where the applicant's property is essentially just south of this road end and just east of where. So on the plan it's in front of you, or at least on this aerial, Chicory is here, and as I get to a few more maps in, you'll see on the plat that Chicory continues as a paper street down to the south, essentially all the way down to the canal as it's platted. There's also an intersecting roadway called Nottingham that is platted to the east of almost essentially where Chicory ends currently. So any of you that were able to get out there would notice there were a couple of flimsy little signs that were up, one of which denotes the end of Chicory, the other of which denotes essentially to the east where Nottingham would be if it were ever constructed. So just to give you an idea of the general locations. The applicant's properties and this entire subdivision area is zoned R1B, which is a single-family designation. The sub to the north is R1D, as in dog, and then the properties fronting West River all the way out to the west are zoned R1A. So a few different zoning designations, none of which really means a whole heck of a lot to this particular request, but I want to make sure we've got a feel for our area. So what the applicant is petitioning you for tonight is essentially he wants to extend these roadways, so he wants to continue Chicory to the south and then initiate the construction of Nottingham, to the east, but he does not wish to take the roads all the way to the ends of these lot frontages. Now, under your roads and driveway ordinance, specifically 205-5, it requires that if you're going to extend a roadway, you are to take it all the way to the end of the lot's frontage. So that's the distinction that we have here, and I incorporated into the plan review app that I just kind of mocked up from the submittal and added in my own very poor graphic showing you essentially what the roadway would look like if it were to meet ordinance. I've got that in here too. So there are two parcels that the petitioner owns, as I mentioned, that both front on paper roadways. Now, under township ordinances, you cannot build on property unless you have roadway frontage and access to utilities. So in this instance, the petitioner would have to extend both the roadways as well as the water and sanitary lines to make these buildable lots. In other words, unless and until these things occur, this land is undevelopable under your current ordinance. Petitioner's intent is for single-family development, which is permitted by right in R1B, and part of his future plans do entail a division of the larger of the two parcels, and I'll show you that again coming up in a couple. But even for our purposes here tonight, that division almost doesn't have a bearing on this particular request because the road is supposed to be extended to the end of the lot's frontage regardless of how. I'll show you that in another slide. Depending upon your action on this particular component of the request, I want to make sure that you're aware, and we've been working with the applicant for the better part of a year, year and a half on this project. To get this project to where the applicant sees it going, there's still a number of steps and a number of approvals that he will need. I want to make sure that you all understand that this is just the starting point for the petitioner to get where he wants to go. If you grant his request, he still plans to divide the larger parcel, which requires Planning Commission and Township Board review and approval. Then ultimately, he'll have to extend and build the road and extend the utilities. That will require input and approvals from DPS, the township engineer, and ultimately Wayne County for the actual roadway construction. So a reminder, these are public rights-of-way. Has to build these roads to public standard, which is a Wayne County. So these are not private roads. These will not be gravel roads. These will be fully constructed public roadways meeting Wayne County standard, ultimately obviously needing this. There's still quite a few steps ahead, depending on where tonight goes. So this is one of the views I didn't give you in the review letter, but I wanted you to see the full or fuller picture of the neighborhood. So if you can see my cursor, this is essentially where Chicory ends right now, right in this area. And it's kind of circled on here very faintly. But so this sort of island piece, this is the larger of the two parcels that the applicant owns. This is Chicory extended. You can see that it's platted all the way, as I mentioned, down to the canal. Now, another parcel that the petitioner owns, north side of this paper street, Nottingham, ends right in here. So it's essentially, I believe it's these 3 or 4 platted lots around this curve right in this area. That's the second parcel. Again, I've got another map showing. You can see that Nottingham is platted, again, as a paper street from Chicory all the way through and across to this partial paper street, which is Gregory, some of which exists, some of which does not. So in order to sort of put the plat map into perspective with reality, I sort of zoomed out on the aerial a bit so that you can see on this particular slide, here's Chicory, this is Marlboro down here, these two short segments of Gregory that have been built, one sort of extension or connection of Chicory that was built between Marlboro and Gregory, and then you can see that essentially the rest of these roadways that are platted through here have yet to be built. Kind of just go back and forth so you can see all of the sort of intricacies of how these roads were originally intended to be built and ultimately extended, in contrast to what is actually there. So now I'm trying to get into a little bit more of the specifics of this request. So this upper right, this is the smaller of the two parcels. This is the one on the north side of Nottingham. So in essence, if you can follow the cursor again, this is the end of Chicory as it's currently built, and then this would be Nottingham extending off to the east. So this is the one parcel. And then the larger parcel is right here, which is all the way down. So Chicory runs all the way along this length of frontage for this particular property, and then Nottingham runs through here at end up into the subdivision to the north. Now, when we compare the proposal in terms of where the petitioner would like to take these roads and utilities versus what the ordinance actually requires, you can see, and this is the plan that's in your agenda packet. So the gray hatch here is his proposal to extend these roadways. So it would go 60 feet of frontage onto the parcel on Nottingham, and it would extend, again, were he to divide the larger parcel into these three pieces, it's roughly 80 or so feet of frontage along this potential third parcel, again, if he were to pursue that. So the reason I mentioned earlier the land division, I wanted you to have an understanding of the full scope of what he intends to do, but as you can see, whether one home is built here or three homes are built here, requirement is that the road be extended the full length of the lot's frontage. So in essence, my very fancy graphic of the extension of Chicory, whether it's this house here or it's just one house here, the full extent of the lot's frontage on Chicory goes all the way down to here. So in essence, the area in pink is what would be required by ordinance, and that's basically the extent of variance that the petitioner is seeking. So he'd like to build them to where he shows. Ordinance requires him to take it all the way to where trying to just give you the comparison back and forth. Yes, sir.
Go back to the plan.
Of course. Yep. No problem. So again, I wanted to kind of paint that broad picture because conceptually this is a bit of a tricky idea, and it's easier for us to sit here and talk about 3-foot variances on side yard setbacks. Everybody can visualize that. But talking about extending a roadway 300 feet versus 80 feet versus 200 feet, I want to just see the full extent of how this fits in.
Brian?
Yes, sir.
Is the idea, I'm looking at the bigger plot, make all those lots into just 3 lots?
That is the petitioner's plan at this point. This larger parcel, he would propose to divide into 3 lots. Just to go a bit off script here, in order to do that, as I mentioned earlier, it requires Planning Commission and Township Board approval. And because he would be proposing new buildable lots, the requirements of your R1E zoning district apply. So he actually has to build bigger lots, or he has to split them into bigger lots than what the R1B would currently.
But that is part of the idea.
Yes,
okay.
Yep, that's his future plan.
And on Nottingham to the north, the first 3 lots are not his?
These are not. No,
okay.
That's correct.
And there's nothing there. I mean, the lots are there, but
correct.
on paper only.
Yep.
Okay.
So in essence, they're kind of in here, approximating.
Yeah.
So it's this wooded, undeveloped area here, and then his parcel.
His parcel, is that parcel gonna be condensed into one lot, or is he gonna leave it?
That would be one building site on its own.
So that's part of the
Yeah,
plan
at least
also.
at this point, we've not discussed any land divisions, or at least I haven't been presented with any idea. The larger parcel division is something we have discussed, and the petitioner has actually submitted application already. However, it was a little cart before horse because we wanted to.
Brian, that north parcel, that's under the R1E too, isn't it?
At this point, it would not be unless he proposes to divide it up. So right now, it's actually much larger than an R1B parcel as it's currently zoned. But if he were to try to divvy it up, then R1E would. Not sure. I don't remember the exact size of this. It would be pretty close. I'm not sure that he actually would have two buildable lots.
I think there's 30,000 square feet for a...
It's 125 width and a 30,000 square foot area. The one thing I can say is that the way he's proposed to extend the road is only the minimum to make this one building site. So that 60 foot that he would take this roadway extension is the minimum for one building site. If he wanted to somehow divide this into two, for instance, if these two rectangles equate to an R1E lot, and the two sort of pie shapes equate to an R1E lot, he would have to extend the roadway at least 60 feet onto that second lot. So in the absence of further road extension of Nottingham, there would only be one building site on this parcel.
Okay.
And he could do the same for the southern parcel too.
Correct.
If that wasn't going to be made one, at the end there, it was going to be two, then he'd have to at least go down
Correct.
60 feet.
And this one, I can tell you from having worked with him for quite a while on this particular project, 3 is the max he can, with the R1E standards,
Okay.
3 is the max he can get out of this particular. So there would not be,
Okay,
this sort of tail lot here would not be able to be divided into
all
two.
right.
Only enough room for 3 total out of that entire parcel. Okay. So I mean, well, this is Chicory extended. Theoretically, so this is Keller. So this is an island parcel. Yes. Theoretically, if you want to take a very, here, let me find it. Very strict interpretation of the ordinance, you could say that he has to build the entirety of that. I did speak
Yep.
I spoke with Lorinda in DPS, and I mean, she deals with roads and driveways far more than I do. She didn't seem to indicate that that would be something that they would typically require. I don't know that we've ever encountered a lot quite like this, quite frankly. So the reality then is, if you want to take that strict interpretation, that doesn't change the petitioner's request. His proposal is here and here. If you want to read that he's supposed to build Keller, then that basically increases the extent of the variance.
Yeah, and that was my question about combining lots, because if they weren't going to be combined, then
Yeah.
I would think that comes into play.
Like I said, it's a
versus-
really unusual circumstance, and even, I mean, the way the intent of extending the road to the end of one's lot, you know, in my opinion, I don't believe it was intended so that you would take it, if you had a 100-foot wide lot, you would take it 100 feet so the next guy could pick it up, and it's intended for, you know, square lots on square roads. Well, when you apply it to a situation like this, with 300-plus foot front curvilinear lots, my opinion, it becomes a bit excessive. And as I'll get to, and as I sort of alluded to in my letter, you know, I believe you could find that to be somewhat burdensome in this particular case. The Nottingham extension in particular, because the reality is this roadway at some point serves almost no purpose to build it to this dead end into somebody's backyard, personally, I see no benefit to doing that. The Chicory extension, I mean, the benefit really comes for all these other folks that potentially turn non-buildable lots into buildable lots. But at some point, the applicant's taking this all on himself, and this is what the minimum he needs to build on his property. So
And the Keller would serve no purpose for him.
no,
It would
no,
if
again,
the other side.
let me find the right map.
Yeah.
So this is Keller right
Yeah,
here. So what construction of Keller would do would be to benefit of these,
Correct.
10, 12
Yep.
lots on the south
Yeah.
side of Keller. So, again, I'll leave it to the board. It's your, your ability to interpret that how you wish to interpret it. I may have taken a more sort of liberal interpretation to Keller, whereas I took a bit of a more conservative approach to Nottingham by going all the way up around. Yep. Well, if he were to, I mean, it would depend on whether it would give this guy at the opposite sort of angle here, if that would give them 60 feet of road frontage, then that would theoretically become a buildable lot. But it would not, even under the strictest read of the ordinance, does not require him to continue Nottingham, say, further east to front these properties. So there might be one additional owner that would maybe get benefit depending on, the angle of that and how much frontage that actually would get them. If nothing else, it would bring it closer. I mean, it would certainly make it or save this potential owner some money from having to extend the roadway themselves. They might have to extend it less than they would currently. Kind of a balancing act between what the petitioner is willing to go forward with to make his lots buildable versus the benefit he provides to this entire neighborhood.
And that property, as a lot of property on the island now, in this situation, it's all on paper.
Correct. Well, yeah, and that's why I wanted to put this in here, is you can see when I go from the plat to the actual, and it's not the same size, so take it with a grain of salt, but, when you go from the plat to reality, obviously there's a lot of paper streets in here. There's a lot of essentially unbuildable lots, unless and until somebody pays to extend the roads and the utilities.
All those lots are, when they do decide to build on them, then they'd have to go under the R1E designation. So they'd have to, because you look, because they said they were platted in 1930s, the 30s. So all
and
these
not
lots,
necessarily. It depends how they're divvied up today. It really depends on. You'd have to go in. We'd have to look at ownership. We'd have to look at sizes of lots. They're not technically creating new lots. If they want to divide something that's a current parcel, then R1E might kick in. But if somebody has lots of record that comprise buildable R1B lots, then the R1E wouldn't come into play. Correct. Correct. Unless they are, right, unless these have all been combined into one much larger parcel, as this one has, all of these lots on this island parcel were combined into one parcel. So his idea to now go back and divide it up is where the R1E kicks in.
Previous owner?
That's my understanding, yeah. I don't know who combined them.
I don't either.
But,
I'm just asking. So somebody at some point in time, previous.
correct. Yes. Correct. Yeah, the path to, I don't want to get too far off topic here, but the ability to combine lots is a very simple process. I own two adjacent properties. I simply fill out the paperwork at the assessor's office to combine them into one parcel so that I only get one tax ID. I now have one parcel, I get one tax bill, etc. So at some point in time, somebody decided that with all of these individual lots, they wanted to combine that into one joint parcel. So, which could, again, and that's why I can't I don't know the exact ownership and size of every lot in this neighborhood. So if somebody owns, a large chunk of this land and wanted to come in and now divide it up if they had been combined, then R1E would kick in.
Yes.
But if that's not the case, then R1B would still apply. So a little confusing, but hopefully that helps a little bit.
Okay.
Brian,
Yes.
would you please repeat what you said the Wayne County requirement would be for finishing the roads?
Well, it's not a county requirement.
Okay.
The roads have to be built to the county standard, so that will include curb and gutter. It includes I'm not an engineer, but it includes the base design, the actual construction. If you think of the cross section of the road,
Has to comply with the township.
right. The township's ordinance requires it to go to the end of the lot. That's really where our focus was here today. It's not a county requirement.
Okay.
But it has to be built to meet the county standard, and it is technically the county's right-of-way. Exactly. So they'll have to, the petitioner has already been working with Wayne County, and again, as this kind of moves forward, at some point, there would be engineered drawings presented to Wayne County for permits to actually construct the road, again, if this is to proceed. We're still kind of at the beginning stages. We're a long ways from him having a crew out there constructing roadway, if that makes sense. I told you this wasn't going to be easy. I told him day one.
Quick question.
Yes.
Are you at some point going to go over this document, CE Rains document?
Hadn't planned on it. That's really the construction of the roadway. Those will all kick in at a later date.
There was definitely some things on here that I would like to understand better, so I just don't know if today's the day or a different day or...
I think that's planning commission's going to go over that. Because ours is a starting position where if we say okay, then he's going to have to take other steps, and he's going to have to address those.
So, for example, if we're here to talk about a variance to the road, I don't understand, for example, number 5, a looped water main shall be provided. Does that mean that a looped water main needs a longer road, or those are the details I just don't? Well, I just, that's why
And if
He's going to have to meet those standards then. So
costs are the issue, granting the variance, items I believe are germane to this.
And that's where I guess we just need this healthy partnership, so we'll stick with this number 5 example. If it's saying a looped water main shall be provided, and that means that that variance, that pink line has to go down another, let's say 50 feet in order to meet that, that's where it's tough for me to even sit through a whole conversation if these things, in order to be met, means that pink line can't be discussed and has to be completed. I think that's very important. Instead of, you're doing a great job. If we spend an hour and a half here and these items are deal breakers. I'm sorry, do you want this one? I apologize.
I'm not in any position to speak on behalf of the engineer.
So and that's why I wanted to ask the
I'm probably
question
not going
early
to
on.
have solid answers to your questions.
Fire issue. If you dead end a water main, lengthy, the pressure drop is excessive. Won't have fire coverage.
So, fully appreciate that, but I just need to know for today, does that mean that pink line we shouldn't be discussing, or that pink line, if it's cut off where it is right now, it still works out? Those are the types of...
He would have other options, but he would have to do more than dead end.
And the same thing, I don't know, when it says the fire chief should review the T turnarounds.
That's just just to make sure that you can take your apparatus in there and
Fully get that
turn
part.
around and be.
I got a big
Yep.
12-passenger van. I get it takes
Yeah.
a while to
Yeah.
turn that van
Yeah.
around. But if that T needs to be another 50 feet wider, then I think that's, to your point, germane to the discussion of what is a variance we're here to discuss.
Well, yeah, I think we're here to discuss how far it goes. Making it big enough is another discussion that has to be had with the planning commission, and the fire chief, et cetera, before the project would go.
Right, and it ultimately
wouldn't-
becomes the engineer and fire
right,
department
right.
review and approval of the proposed construction of the roadway.
So how can we do, if we're voting tonight, a vote to approve this variance if for number 5, it actually, the variance could not be granted to make that loop thing accomplished?
I don't know that that's the case, number one.
Well,
Number two, my suggestion would be if you were considering favorable action, you include these items as conditions.
That they
Correct.
yes.
So the reality is these things have to occur regardless. So
In other words-
they're still going to have to design this to meet the utility spec, the road spec, regardless of a variance that you may or may not grant. They still will have to design the roads and extend the utilities per all other requirements. So if that ends up being contrary, then that's something the applicant's going to have to deal with.
In order to address that, he asked for a specific extension length. So he had no idea if that length would cover this item 5.
Couldn't tell you. His engineer's here tonight. Maybe we'll bounce
Okay,
that
so
one past
so
him.
okay, we'll cover that. Okay,
Sure.
all right.
The only other thing I can tell you is that fire did also review this, and their only comment at this point is tied to fire hydrant location. So, again, the turnarounds have to be designed appropriately. You're not granting a variance to waive or modify from the turnaround requirements.
Right,
If
right.
in order to design the turnarounds properly, he has to build it another 10 feet, well, then guess what? He has to build it another 10 feet. I understand where you're
Yeah.
coming from. You guys want to make sure that all I's are dotted,
That everything
T's are
works.
crossed, and I get that. But I can't speak for fire. I can't speak for engineering. I'm trying to present to you the petitioner's request versus what the ordinance requires.
But after a year and a half, some of these things have been worked out, I'm sure.
They've been discussed to some degree, yes. And again, we did provide fire, engineer, police, all of these agencies and bodies were basically asked to comment on these plans. Police had no comment. Fire said hydrants have to be every 300 feet, and then the engineer, you have their letter. Let me move on. Let me maybe just wrap up my stuff, and we'll let the engineer come up and make sure we don't just get stuck on that one particular. So, again, to sort of just summarize, there's really two ordinance sections that apply in general to what we're dealing with. 205-5, which requires the roadway to be extended to the end of the lot's frontage. That's where the petitioner is seeking these two variances. Section 19.7, which requires at least 60 foot of frontage on a public right-of-way or a private road, but in this case, public road right-of-way, in order to build on a property, and it is the applicant's proposal that he would meet that second standard, where he's seeking variances tied to the further extension of those roads. 23.5B, these are our typical conventional variance standards. I won't go into detail. You've got my review letter, and we've been over these many times. So, overview of my letter. The ordinance requires both Chicory and Nottingham would have to be extended the full length of each lot's frontage. Based on my rough math, the proposal is to extend Chicory approximately 80 feet of what would be this future parcel. So about approximately 80 feet onto this parcel, as opposed to the approximately 350 feet. So in essence, that's the difference. If we were to focus on this as just this property, then this gray part's about 80. The full frontage of that lot is in the neighborhood of 300 to 350 feet, quite a bit longer. Similarly, on the Nottingham side, petitioner wants to take it to the minimum 60 to meet the zoning ordinance requirement of 19.7, whereas the full lot is roughly 300 feet or has 300 feet of frontage. So that's what he's proposing versus what's required by ordinance. I mentioned earlier, both of these roadways are platted as public roads. If approved at some point in time, have to get permits and approval from Wayne County, have to be built to public standard. All of those things will still apply regardless of variance or not at this time. Each of these parcels do have, in my opinion, relatively lengthy frontages. As I mentioned, bit unusual to have 350 foot curvilinear lots, where I think really the intent was 80-foot lots, 100-foot lots, 125-foot lots that were all perpendicular to a nice pipe street network. This particular instance, we have some unusual conditions up to and including the fact that, as we talked about earlier, that Keller connects through on the southeast side of this larger parcel to the point where these are surrounded. This one parcel is actually contains nothing but road frontage. So don't see that every day, not even in this township, which does quirky road designs, some interesting parts. The way the ordinance reads, and again, not including Keller, so I maybe took a little more liberal approach here, but by my rough math, to extend Nottingham to here and to extend Chicory to here is roughly an additional 500 feet of roadway that need to be constructed in order to meet the ordinance. That's a pretty extensive amount. Under your finding of practical difficulty, we have the ability to make a finding of burden or unnecessary burden in this case. As I point out in my letter, you could make that finding. Applicant did not create these lots, even though we do have the proposal maybe in the future to divide the larger parcel into 3. As I mentioned before, whether this is 1 or this is 3, the ordinance requires Chicory to go at least to there, and then we can debate the Keller extension construction even beyond that extension. In terms of granting of the request in relation to all the other elements under our review standards, public safety, land values, access to light and air, traffic flow, neighborhood character, I won't list each of them, but that's most of them. I believe we made findings in our letter that we really don't foresee there being any huge issues relates to that. I did make the point in a couple of cases that even by extending them as proposed, there are at least a handful of property owners that will potentially gain the benefit of now having, at least as in a general sense, they may not view it as a benefit, but that would potentially have the benefit of taking currently non-buildable lots that become now available sites. So by the extension of the road and the utilities at someone else's cost, they could be getting the benefit of not having to pay for it, but now having a buildable lot. Again, whether they view that as a benefit or not is not up to me. That's up to each of them. General sense, you can see. And again, even if you pass this tonight, the applicant still has to comply with all of the roadway construction standards, which will include county, we'll throw in the fire department as well. And then if he's to pursue the land division, still has to go through planning commission and township board in order to larger parcel into. Now I'm done. Yes.
You've got to extend it another 100.
I think it depends on how you phrase a motion. My suggestion, again, if you're comfortable acting, and I don't want to, I'm not trying to back anybody into a corner. It does not affect me one way or the other. So, but if you are comfortable in acting tonight, I would suggest conditions noting that all of these other agencies' standards and requirements must be adhered to. So if that means we're saying you only have to extend Nottingham 60 feet onto this lot, however, engineering and DPS come back and say, nope, you got to go 100 feet onto this lot to make the water main work, then I would suggest that's the requirement they now have to meet. I don't necessarily think it would have to come back before you if they were going beyond the variance that you granted. also suggest conversely, they could not, if engineering said, oh, you don't need to build all of that additional roadway, I would suggest that we can only back up to the variance if you granted it. That would be the minimum that the applicant would have to do. That make sense? In essence, he couldn't build less than what you granted. He may, some other agency could require him to build more than what you granted, but he could never slide back past.
Less than what we say.
Correct,
Yeah.
correct. I didn't phrase that very well, but hopefully it makes sense.
As far as the, talked a little bit about the benefit to the property owners. We don't know the number of property owners or parcels are owned. It, to some of the property owners, by middle of somebody's property or at the start of somebody's property not be a benefit, depending on how they view it. We just don't know that without those property owners here.
Correct.
Because somebody could say, well, your proposed extension is only coming 12 feet onto my property, and that's not doing anything for me, and I don't want it even coming 12 feet because I don't want my property developed. We don't have that knowledge of those parcel owners, correct?
Correct.
All right.
What I would say, I guess, just to sort of add to that is, if it goes 12 feet onto somebody's parcel, then that's 12 feet plus the rest of the additional length that they don't have to construct.
Correct.
So if it's 12 feet onto their parcel, they would only need to extend it 48 feet to meet the minimum zoning standard.
Correct.
Whether that's something that they desire or not, again, I couldn't tell you. But
Okay.
So I guess to piggyback that question, this document that was given to us to party owner or party in interest, did those parcel owners receive this?
yes.
Well, then I guess that's the answer.
They've been informed.
They're not here. They've been informed.
Correct. Per statutory requirements as well as your own local ordinance, property owners within 300 feet of our subject area were sent notice of this public hearing tonight. So at a minimum, they've been notified. Lori, I believe you had one call with just a question about what the proposal was, but nothing in writing, nothing voicing objection or support, to be fair on both sides of it. Really almost no input from surrounding property owners. Good, Mr. Chair?
Are you through?
I mean, I can keep talking if you want.
You know,
You guys
Brian's
know
never
you
through.
guys know I can keep talking. I think at this point, it would be prudent to allow the petitioner and his engineer to come up and maybe take a couple of your questions.
All right. Okay.
But I'll be here. I'm not going to.
Thank you, Brian. Okay, can we have the petitioner come up, Joe Ohab,
Certainly.
and give us your name
My name is
And-
Joseph Ohab,
and your address?
25044 East River Road, Grosio, Michigan.
Okay.
82. Lovely town.
The application that you filled out, you marked the box that it is my understanding that and belief that unusual conditions applying to my land render the strict application of the provisions of the ordinance unduly harsh and unreasonable to an extent not intended by the ordinance and not generally suffered by others. Practical difficulty. So that's what you're telling us. Now, could you elaborate on that?
Yes, I tried to reach out to the other owners and see if then we can kind of work together and make this possible to get it done. What it started is actually like this. I have 6 kids. They were all born and raised on the island. They move out and have families different places, and now they want to come back home. So that's when I started looking for the land. And when I found this over here, I said, well, I can get them all together up here. But I didn't know there was going to be that many difficulties. Brian actually told me about it about 2 years ago, but I'm kind of stubborn and determined. So I've been going back and forth to Wayne County and things like that, and to get it, everybody on the same page, and which Wayne County approved the design finally after about 3 or 4 meetings and 4 designs and stuff like that. They approved the road the way it is. They recommended actually that T ending on it to turn around for fire department or things like that. So then I come back to the township and I say, if that road I'll be expected to do like like it was what it calls on a zoning, there's no way that'll be affordable. I bought this from UFM. There's somebody donated land to them because there was nothing done for 93 years, and they got fed up with it. They didn't want nothing to do with it, so I ended up buying it.
Who is UFM?
Huh?
What, UFM?
Yes. University of Michigan. Yeah, somebody donated land to it. Yeah.
Oh, U of M. Oh,
yeah,
U of M.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
U of M.
Yeah. And here I am. I mean, I'm trying to, work it that's going to be possible. It's going to be feasible to do it. If it comes to the cost extremely, like if they're developing this road, then I just going to give it back to them or something, because it's not going to be worth it. No, it's right now. The cost is already up there. No, I've been for the 2-3 years over here between cleaning it and getting surveys and things like that and engineering. It's up there already. No, they were cheap when I bought them first, but not cheap no more. So I'm asking that that be reasonable on it, that that I can bring it as much as possible. Whatever ordinance requires is actually more than what it is, but minimum 60 feet or whatever the extension on it, and let me build over there.
Have you gotten just an estimate on what it's cost?
I don't want to see it yet. Approximately, somewhat, but
So what approximately? What are you? I mean, you're talking about the what you're asking for as opposed to what the ordinance calls for. I mean, the difference is quite a bit. I know.
Yeah, we're talking about $30,000 per lot.
30,000 per, that's the 3 lots on the island.
Just for 150 feet. 30,000 per 50 feet.
Procedure subdivision road construction is approximately $135. Standard pavement thicknesses. Drainage can I haven't seen a geology report, so I don't know.
But you've got the sanitary sewers to extend. You got a lot of work to do, a lot of construction work to do.
Tell me about it. Yeah, I know. I've been, like I said, I've been at it for a year and a half. I don't know much about a building. I'm a businessman, but I'm in a different field. I own in the market. I don't know if you know about it or not, but a lot of the customers from Grozio that comes over, and there has been family-owned business, and 5 out of 6 of my kids works with me. That's a family operation. That's something different, but I like to do this for for my kids, and I just keep on going one step at a time, and what it gets me.
Okay, so you're.
If I knew exactly the cost, what it's going to be, and everything else, I'd probably drop it and run like hell.
But you're basically saying that the hardship is cost. I mean, the dollars. The dollars are what's going to stop you from doing this.
That would be it. Yes.
And if we say, okay, you still got a lot of dollars in front of you with the construction cost.
Nothing's been done for
Did
free.
Yeah. So do you understand how many dollars that is? What even if we approve this and you don't have to go the full length to the end of the lot lines?
Well, it'd be better than going full out. Somebody got to start it. Nothing happened over there for 93 years on that land. So it would be a beginning. One house would be a start. Maybe eventually we'll develop something, hey, let me go one step at a time and see where I get to. That's how I got where I'm at.
I noticed that in your documents that you provided us that you did reach out to some of the people who own the land surrounding you, and you got very, very minimal
I got two people that answered, and they were past the lots all the way in the end over. They were interesting to if I want to purchase them. Other than that, I have nothing.
So how many did you reach out to? You know, how many-
Everybody, every owner up there on that
How many
around
is
the
that?
property. Because first I thought, this plot is totally wrong over here, the design of the plot. So I was thinking if we get together, if I get all these people together, that we replot it and do it the right way, and everybody pay their share to get it done. But that didn't go too well. No, my hopes was there, but it didn't happen. Nobody answered to it. Like I said, I have two people, but there were lots past that pink line over here on a chicory over here. There was a gentleman that was interesting to sell. Other than that,
That's on the east side of Chicory?
that would be west side. That would be
West
west
side.
side. The one that registers the West River.
Okay, yeah, on the west side.
Yeah.
Excuse me, the west side, yeah.
West side, yes.
Right. Okay, is there anything else? I mean, what I'm hearing you say basically is that the hardship is the determining factor for you, and that's why you terminated the extensions the way you did.
Yeah, what I'm trying to do is be as fair as possibly, do as, what it's required, but don't ask me to build the whole entire thing for everybody else. I mean, there's a people of the, west on the Chicory, they will benefit, okay? They're staying silent right now, but I bet if the road is built over there, there'll be homes coming up over there. But, I do what I can, that's about all I can say,
So you're a very benevolent guy, right? So you're gonna.
I don't know how to quit. I just keep on going. I'm like a turtle, keep on stepping one thing in a time.
So a question for you, and I assume you've seen this document, CE Rain's document.
No, I have not.
Okay, then maybe for so
No,
I'm
I
just
didn't
curious.
see it.
One of the points here says the site and improvements shall be subject to stormwater management measures as required by Wayne County. And then it states a maintenance agreement with the township shall be required. What does that mean? And is there an example that is, I guess, current where that's in place somewhere else?
I didn't see that, Larry, and I don't know nothing about it, no.
I have not seen that phrase before, so I'm just curious. Are we talking about what extent is the maintenance agreement?
Yeah, Joe,
Yes.
you have your partner up there. You want to have him come to the podium and give us his name and his connection with you and his address?
My name is Mitesh Gandhi. I work for Gateway Engineering. Come from Shelby Township. Gateway Engineering. Gateway? Yes.
And where do you live?
Shelby Township.
Okay.
49655 West Central Park, Shelby Township, Michigan.
Okay, now you want to address the question that the board member had on a maintenance agreement?
Well, maintenance agreement is a storm sewer that you store on site for a subdivision. When you develop the subdivision, you design a stormwater management, a detention pond, prepare a paper which you agree with Wayne County that whatever the feasible cost to maintain it, the developer will bear it. That's what it is, a stormwater management agreement with Wayne County and as per the Wayne County standards.
So that would be between Mr. Ohab and
Yes.
and
If we
Wayne
move
County.
Forward, if we move forward, there are a lot of steps, as Mr. Bryan explained. As we move forward, we have to get all these approval from Wayne County and the other entities.
And I think the way this is written, the township would want to see that agreement, is what that's saying.
Right. So the township engineer wouldn't give us the permit to build anything until he sees these agreements or whatever the minimum requirement from the township. As far as your question was very good for the water main. we will agree, whatever the Wayne County requirements, we have to. And as you see, the dead end, what we started, Mr. Bryan knows, that we had just roundabout middle of the island, and we submitted our plan to Wayne County, and Wayne County came back and gave us the suggestions that we need this hammerhead at the end to turn around for the fire department. And here you see the improvement as per the minimum requirement. But again, it's a cost prohibitive for my client just for 3 lots to extend the road all the way to the end. And that's why we are here for.
Okay, any other questions for the engineer?
Could I just, a letter included in this pack. Wayne County, but it's Stan writing it. Oh, okay. Writes it.
Not so good with the electronic.
You had said that you were working with Wayne County. It sounds like he's working.
Well, we prepared their drawings. It's too far from us, so we gave them the documents, and they proposed, they. Yes, we received, and that's what we did, the hammerhead. That's what the requirement from the Wayne County.
So they're, as far as they're concerned, this is good. And here the.
Yes, and we still have to comply with that ordinance, the Wayne County requirement.
But from Wayne County's point of view, is that the purpose
Yes,
of this letter?
that's what they asked, the minimum, the hammerhead at the end.
Brian told me you guys won't talk.
So we did do a little bit of preliminary requirements.
And he knows about that. I don't.
Just a point of order, you don't have permission from the county to do this.
No.
It says the starting, this is the first step.
Yeah, this
This
is,
is, what we did is, before come to you, we went to Wayne County to get some preliminary idea that where we are getting.
Yeah, it has no bearing on whether.
It is just to tell us that as per the design standard, it looks good, but they didn't give the permit.
That was my
Yes.
interpretation, yeah.
It's not approved, it's not,
Yeah, sorry about that.
well,
Is there anything else you want to tell the board here before we exercise our duty?
No, just I hope it's favorable, and I say thank you in advance. No,
Okay, well,
I thank you.
okay, thank you. Okay, given that, do we have anybody that has a motion? You want to make a motion on this appeal? Yeah, and we also have to have that addendum that, that,
just for
you know,
Yeah, from
the conditions, right?
Here
You
we
have to
go.
put the conditions on it.
I'd like to indicate, though, just for the record, that I think we're at a loss of information because of the unique circumstances of this appeal. As Steve mentioned, there's a letter from the Raines Company in here that we don't have the answers to those questions, although they shouldn't impact our decision, because all we're being asked to do is to grant the variance. But I think it's difficult on the board to make that decision based on the information. Point that out. I'm not moving for or against it. I just say it's a difficult decision.
Yeah, because without our approval, that's the end of it. He can't go forward. Unless he wants to go the full length and do that whole roadway bit.
That would be my understanding. If he wouldn't need us if he was going to do his entire width.
Right, so
Yeah,
he
and
could
then
do
he
that.
wouldn't be-
Well, I also understand, though, that financial burden isn't one of our factors in its entirety. It can be considered, but it's not one of the factors that is our job here.
Yeah, because we put ourselves against the ordinance itself. That's what we're measuring ourselves.
Correct.
One more question for discussion. So the juncture we're at here, the motion is either to approve with a bunch of caveats, deny, or I guess option to table until more information is available, because approval or denial is pretty.
Not the utility standards. If the utility standards hold them to a higher standard, that is what they must meet. But again, I'm not the engineer, and I am not going to even try to step on their toes to give you accurate answers to the questions that you've posed tonight. If you're not 100% confident one way or the other, and you'd like to hear from Raines and or the fire department, we will absolutely have those folks in attendance if you wanted to table.
Well, I'm personally concerned that the utility information can impact cost of the road. Also concerned that the applicant can't give us a what concern unless I have more information, I don't feel comfortable with this application. That's just me.
You know, we have a bunch of land that's not developable right now, and you look at it and you say, what would it take to get this land developed into, and you have houses built on it, and it's really a tough situation for a developer to do that. And I'm saying, you know, it's not saying that I agree with the extension or not. It's just that it's a tough situation for a developer to put houses on in this area. I don't know the answer to that, but I kind of agree that there's some more questions that could very well impact the decision that the extension is not going to help. And so with that, we'd be voting on something that's not going to help.
I guess my only comment after listening to Brian would be, again, it kind of goes back to the earlier point, if we had a motion to approve and the caveat is, you know, this document and these 7 points, that's a lot of caveats to have to go back and someone to ensure that they're all being followed, and it could take 6 months, 3 months, a year, and that's just the unknown. But to your point, Brian, you know, it still is resonating with me. If the fact of the question is the road, and all these folks in these 7 items all come back and say the road variance goes another 60 feet, and that's all part of the motion, then we're back to have all the information.
Again, unfortunately, without having access to Raines tonight, I just can't give you a clear response to that one way or the other. I guess what I'm hearing, at least from a couple of folks so far, is a level of uncertainty and or a need for some additional information. Again, has no impact on me one way or the other. I would personally prefer that you all be 100% confident in the decision that you make. And if you feel that there's information that you still need, I think it would be appropriate to table it out that additional information. Perhaps what we can even do in the meantime is have the applicant's engineer sit down with Raines and, so they can discuss this mutually, as opposed to simply,
Right.
here's
Right.
the paper, you review it, okay, here's our review, you review it. Let's actually maybe promote some communication between the two parties and see if they can't come to some conclusions that lead to one decision or another. And that could be a yay, it could be a nay. I'm not going to suggest that I know what direction that goes, but I don't want you all to put forth a motion that you're not comfortable with. Feel that there's some missing information. I get that. Apologize if I had given this any second thought. We could have had Russ here tonight
We
to
have
try
some,
to.
you want to come up and you want to address another question, answer, you come on up.
We can go by point, like you mentioned that there are 7 items. We can go point by point and I can explain each in detail. Because this is the first step. You are not approving anything. We have to go through these entities. Let's see you approve it, and tomorrow they say there is no depth for sanitary. There is no project. It can end over there. This is more cost for my client to go forward and find all this information. So this is bare minimum that he provide you as per the requirement, that these are the lot, these are the design that we can go forward. Now, for the T connection, even if the road ends at where this pink ends, you will see the same kind of T. Let's see if we just end the road at both end connection where Mr. Bryan highlighted with the pink, you will see the same as per the Wayne County requirement. For the water main is not requiring that you have to have a road. You can have utilities without road. So the road is not the requirement for the utilities. Utilities can go. We have several projects that we provide phase 1, phase 2. It requires loop, and we just provide in the future line. Doesn't require a road. So these items can come at a later date when we move forward for the engineering. But this is a very first step to move forward. So I would highly request, please allow my client to move forward. Thank you.
Okay, given that little information, do we have anybody that still has any discussion they want to talk about before we try to get a motion here? Anybody else want to?
A lot of the type of area that we're looking at, one of the problems we have is that this type of property is held by individuals. It's not held by developers. And the individuals are always looking for the guy next door to put the road in because they don't have the wherewithal, the means to do it. And that's why that property's been sitting empty for 90 years, because of that. Plus, if you look at the lots, they're all small lots. So that it has to be combined. There's this property that is just sitting. I look at what Mr. Ohab wants to do, and if any continuation, whether it be Keller or down Nottingham or Chicory, does him no good. With what he's done, he can get to his 3 properties there, or the other property on the other side. and you'd be looking at some possibility there. Yeah, the way I interpreted these other things, that's not what's before us. Those utilities are not before us. All those other things are not before us. Those are things that have to be looked at, and he would have to do before anything could happen or before the project could go. He can't just put in these roads and build his houses. So all those things will be taken care of or looked at by the Planning Commission in Wayne County. So I think if we try and think of what we're doing, which is just to look at the road, possibly we could move ahead on this.
I guess what we're saying is, unless we approve this,
Well, yeah, the 7 things are coming after.
right, so now, or don't approve it, if we don't approve it.
Right, and the 7 things those things have to be looked at for him to do them. He can't ignore them. They're just not going to be looked at by us.
But he could go ahead if he extended it all the way we said, all the way to the end of the parcels. He could go ahead.
Well, he could go ahead, but he'd still have to do those 7 things.
Yeah.
So that the 7 things do not have a bearing on what we're doing tonight.
Got to do them no matter what.
Correct. Right.
Right.
Whether he does them now or he does them later.
Well, he
chooses not to.
Well, yeah. Why would you? Why would you do them and then find out that you can't put your road in?
Joe, you want to make a comment? You got to come up to this podium.
Asking for you guys' blessings so I can keep on doing it, keep on going at it. I've been at it for almost 2 years now. I like to continue, and I succeed in everything I ever started. And there will be a beginning for a township, for anybody. That's your tax base for anybody else over here. And that's something that, if I don't start over here, nobody started in 93 years over there. I'm willing to start and put my foot forward. Let me give it a start on it. Somebody else wants to build it farther down on Chicory. There may be, hey, I don't have to take so far, maybe a couple 100 feet, and I can build another house over there for somebody or something. And there's the taxes that are coming in in that thing, and the school taxes and everybody else. But, you have to put that first step. I'm willing to do that first step. If you guys give me your blessing, I'll continue with this. I go exactly to the Wayne County. The next thing would be there's the engineering that'll be done for the road, taken to the Wayne County and address all these points. So that's the step. But if I don't get your blessing, if I don't know if I'm going to get it or not get it or go anywhere, I just drop it. No, that's the thing. No. So it's I want to keep on going. No.
Okay, Mr. Ohab, thank you.
Thank you.
I'll make a motion.
Okay.
And if you need to take notes, or we'll talk about it in the discussion. So I'll make a motion for appeal number 17-003 by Mr. Joseph H. Ohab of 25044 East River, that we accept this request for variance as described tonight with a few additions, that all measures in the C.E. Raines Company document dated November 10th, 2017 to Ms. Lori Zalewski, all 7 items are vetted out and validated, and that compliance is met with each of those 7 items, and that the variance cannot be less than what was requested tonight. And if any of the requirements drive the variance to have that road be longer, that also be approved by this board.
No. Thank you.
Discussion? Do we put a time frame on this?
No,
It would,
I don't
wouldn't
think
be
so.
need for a time frame? Because it could go on for 2 years, I don't know.
No, well, the petitioner has a year essentially to initiate a project for which a variance is
So,
granted.
so yeah, for a year for the but the project, would you consider the project's already initiated?
Not at this point, no. No,
So he's got a year from when we accept it.
Yeah, he's done some preliminary, but now he could go forward to actually put things in place.
I believe
Oh, less
the request,
than his request.
Then his
request
request.
was, I believe 80 feet was in the document,
Right.
Brian? There was one for each road.
Correct. It would go, the proposal is 60 feet onto the northerly parcel, and then it's 80 feet essentially onto that proposed southerly parcel if that larger parcel were to be divided. In essence, it's where it's shown on the plan.
So you're talking about an 80-foot and a 60-foot.
Right
North
now, it's
parcel
one.
is defined. The other parcel is not. That blue line is arbitrary.
But the road, so take out the division of
Blue
those
line,
three
that's what I'm
parcels.
asking for. A
He's
length-
proposing to take that road where he's proposing to take that road.
Correct. So
So-
give me a length from the existing road to there.
That the
I don't
80
have
feet.
that.
I don't either.
It's 80 feet onto that third lot.
Doesn't exist.
What it does, if you look at the legals and you go back and look at, we know where it is. I mean, we have the plans in front of us. So, want to nitpick that, then I'll ask the engineer for a specific measurement.
No, I don't need to see a picture. I need a number. Tell me.
60 feet on,
No, 60 feet from where?
from
No, on Nottingham, we agree. Keep going.
west property line.
Okay. On Chicory,
East. On Chicory, you have 80 feet
from where?
from north property line to south.
Yeah, that's no. I think what Gary's looking for is from Chicory, where Chicory ends now.
Oh, from
How,
nine
how
to here?
from where it ends now to
don't have
that
my
80
plan.
that 80 feet into the third.
So,
We can.
Township's minimum requirement is 60 feet wherever the lot starts.
If we amend the position that you put down there, can we just say from the end of the concrete of Chicory to that? I don't know how to put it, but from the end of the
Well,
concrete
yeah,
on
so
Chicory
when we
to
yeah.
to lot number 3.
Northwest corner of parcel 3, we can say. .210 feet on Chicory.
So we're extending it 210 feet.
Yes.
Whatever's in the discussion is part of the motion, so.
280 feet on Nottingham.
So again, the extension on that you're going to be building on Chicory is what? What is the length on Chicory? You have 200,
Oh, yeah, I thought you said 210.
210? 210, and then on Nottingham,
280.
280.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we'll use that rather than saying what you've provided. We now have some definite bounds.
Gary, are you okay with that? That's great. Thank you. Okay, so now we've got the motion to accept, and then with the provisions on the letter, plus we have identified the length of extensions. So with that, we have a second. Okay, so all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing no opposition, the appeal is approved. Mr. Ohab.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You too.
Thank you.
Good luck with your project.
Yeah, but that's not taking it all as far as Brian's showing.
$67,500.
Yeah, but considering he probably, I don't know what he bought the property for, probably next to nothing.
Got nothing.
Yeah. Yeah.
He didn't pay anything. They wanted to get rid of it, and they paid it back.
Rule of thumb used to be $1 million a mile. I-75, but that's back. You know, working.
And that's highway grade, not.
Okay, now we get to item number 5, which is actually the annual election of officers. So can we have a motion on chair?
Can I interrupt briefly?
Yeah.
Thanks. I just want to thank Bob for all his efforts. He was on this committee a lot longer or this board a lot longer than I was, Bob Pierce.
Yes.
That's why Chuck's here.
I was gonna mention last night. I made the motion to make Chuck a permanent member of the board rather than the alternate to replace Bob Pierce, who moved off the island.
Yeah, so we went through the process, and then we got, then you got the board approval.
The board approved it, yes.
Okay.
So Chuck is good.
And just so you all know, I submitted my resignation to the township because I am going to be gone on a 4.5-month out-of-the-country experience. So starting January.
Out of the country?
I might not have missed a meeting.
Out of the country experience.
You know?
As long as Jill keeps it up.
Yeah.
Sailing around the world or something?
Yeah.
You're going, I thought you said that.
Yeah, so I've been on the board 20 years. It's enough. It's enough.
Oh, well,
So that deserves an accolade there.
Absolutely.
And maybe you'll come back after
Nice
you.
job. Thank you, Jackie.
Thank you. I would come back. Come back.
Okay. Well, okay. Can we proceed with the?
Yes.
Do we have a motion for the chair?
I'd like to make a motion to approve Jim to continue as chair.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Vice chair?
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Secretary? This might be a little more difficult.
Yeah. Bob
get
was
it.
the secretary.
Bob was the secretary.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Have we met our obligation?
Yep.
I was glad to see this on here because of the frequency of our meetings. We're going to get to the end of the year and not have anything. So
Okay, so, we have any, no comments? Having no comments, we can adjourn. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We are adjourned.
Okay.
Thank you.
Now, Gary.
Go off air.
Yeah.